A Mississippi law could help prevent teen crime before it happens. Beginning July 1st, which is Wednesday, juveniles charged with a violent crime while using a gun will be charged as adults. That means there's no more juvenile court. It is straight to criminal court. WTVA's Jake Holcomb is live in Tupelo tonight with more on this new law.
Yeah, Daniela, this new law has teeth. And one local district attorney hopes that it'll make kids think twice before committing violent crimes. Beginning Wednesday, juvenile offenders who commit a violent felony while using a gun skip kiddie court. They'll be charged as adults. No takebacks, no second chances. We're talking adult jail and state prison. If you are a parent, mentor, coach, or role model, now is the time to talk to kids about the consequences of their actions. District Attorney Jason Herring says violent offenses aren't just what you typically think of.
An offense is what is defined by statute. Some people may only think of violent offense as something we would typically think of as violence, like aggravated assault or a homicide. But things like burglary of a dwelling is defined as a violent offense.
Carjackings, robbery, aggravated assault, and murder are just a few of the violent crimes that now fall under this new law. If you're between the ages of 13 and 18 and commit one of these crimes while using a gun, you will face real-world adult consequences. Live in Tupelo, Jake Holcomb, WTVA 9 News.